This is an introduction to Carbon Cloth for Maya version 2 that includes rigid body support. Specifically here we're going to talk about the basics of carbon rigid bodies. So it's important to understand that in carbon a rigid body is split into a shape and a body, and the rigid is a dynamic frame, the shape is a collision mesh, and the body connects the two. This makes it a lot more powerful than simple solutions like bullet. That will become much clearer as we present various advanced capabilities of the carbon rigid body. So let's walk through the basics of how to set up a carbon rigid body. So here we have the version 2 shelf. This is the rigid, this is the shape, and this is the body that connects the two. Now, to make life simple, we have created a macro here which will generate a rigid body from a Maya mesh. So let's create a Maya mesh. Let's just create a sphere, and then let's just duplicate that sphere. There we go. Okay. Right. Let's just move those around a bit. Just move them away from the default axis here. Okay. Okay. So we've created some spheres. Now, the cool thing is that you can turn those into rigid bodies by simply selecting them in the outliner or in the view window. Right click on the macro button and select rigid bodies. We've lost the visualization of the body, but if we just reset the simulation, they'll come back. So we've hidden the Maya geos and have replaced it with carbon physics draw. Now, as I said in the introduction, rigid bodies are consisting of 3 parts. A rigid node, which currently is misnamed actor, and that will be corrected shortly. A shape node, which is the collision hull, and a body node that connects them together. Now, the key thing about the rigid node is it determines the position in space of the rigid body. So if we move the rigid and reset the simulation, the shape follows. If we rotate the rigid and reset simulation, the shape follows. And the key point about separating these elements is that they all do something different. So you can use them in very powerful ways, as I've said earlier, we will show as we go forward here. So let's just move this guy back, and let's just create ourselves a collider floor so we can see these ridges in action. If we turn that now into a carbon collider by clicking on the collider node, and then we have a quick look at its thickness is 0.001, and the carbon scale here is 1, so that's a very, very thin floor. We can easily make it a centimeter thick. We've lost the visualization of the floor, so let's just turn it on with the carbon physics draw. Okay, so now we've got a collider as a floor and some rigids, and we can just play. They will roll about very nicely.